All throughout the New Testament, we are told that the end is nigh, at least on a surface reading of the text. Futurists have taken these passages as not really meaning near. Near doesn't really mean near, they say. It means that the end is near from the point of view of God, since a day is as 1,000 years to him, or near means we don't really know when it will happen, so we should behave as though it were near, just in case. Still others may say that near means near after it starts happening. In other words, it will occur quickly once the ball starts rolling. There are a number of different approaches, as you can see. However, Bible scholars that aren't conservative Christians don't buy any of these approaches. They say that the early church and even Jesus himself believed the world was about to end, but were in fact wrong about that. In the Olivet Discourse, Jesus said, "Verily," or truly, "I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." That certainly seems like Jesus made a mistake if the Left Behind sort of interpretation has got it right. Albert Schweitzer used that passage in Mark 13 to conclude, and parallel passages, to conclude that the historical Jesus was a failed eschatological prophet. Orthodox Christians certainly don't want to admit to that. There are a number of possible approaches to this problem passage where Jesus says, this generation, shall not pass away till all these things are fulfilled. But one possible approach would be that preterism is correct, to become a preterist, if you will. Let's flesh out the Olivet Discourse a little more fully now. Mark 13 and parallel passages, and I won't say parallel passages every time, but you'll know that that's part of what I mean when I speak of Mark 13. In Mark 13, Jesus is asked about the end. He very clearly addresses the destruction of the temple in AD 70 in his reply, the sacking of Jerusalem. And this occurred, as I just said, in 70 AD. Conservatives take this to be a genuine prophecy, whereas liberals say that somebody after the fact put these words on Jesus' lips post 70 AD, kind of rewriting the history there. At any rate, it is unmistakable that the temple's destruction is in view in the discourse. Futurists tend to see more than just that in view, though, in the Olivet Discourse. The temple was destroyed in AD 70, and Jesus did prophesy that, they maintain, but that is a foreshadowing of the fuller double fulfillment of the real end of the world at the end of the 7-year tribulation period, which is still future from our perspective today. Is that reading warranted? The futurist reading? Well, Jesus was speaking as a Jew to Jews in a first-century Jewish context. What would a first-century Jew consider to be the end of the world as they knew it at that time? What is the main focus of Judaism today, or at least one focus of Judaism today? The answer that comes immediately to mind can only be the temple in Jerusalem. Of course, the Jews today don't have a temple there, but they would like to have one if they could rebuild it, I am told. The Dome of the Rock, though, of course, is standing there, and the Islamic community doesn't want to give that up, certainly. So the destruction of the temple in AD 70 marked the destruction of the sacrificial system set up by Moses. That was a very big deal to the first century Jews. The followers of Jesus understood that the Mosaic system was no longer necessary. The new order had been instantiated by Jesus, which fulfilled the Mosaic shadow. But not all Jews were followers of Jesus. although most of Jesus' followers were Jews. So that was a very huge event in the Jewish world at the time, in the first century. It was eminently appropriate to describe that as the end of the Jewish world, as it had been known for, I think Moses, I'm not sure exactly when Moses was, but for quite a number of centuries leading up to the time of Jesus, the Mosaic Law was in place. At the same time, of course, the actual world itself, the planet Earth, was not annihilated, with the kingdom of God, as more popularly understood, being set up in AD 70. It was just the end of the Mosaic world, not the end of the world absolutely. Notice also that it is the apostles themselves which are being addressed in Mark 13. You will see such and such take place, and in response, you will do thus and so. If this is primarily addressed to some future, that is, from our perspective today, some future Antichrist, 20 years from now, say, you, that is the apostles, aren't going to be around. They're not around now, so they're not going to be around 20 years from now. They died 2,000 years ago. The overcomers in Mark 13 are to pray that their flight is not during the Sabbath. Yet very few Christians today keep the Sabbath. That was part of the Mosaic order, which is no longer in place. All the signs of the times were in place prior to 70 A.D. As well. There were earthquakes, wars and rumors of wars, birth pangs, etc. leading up to 70 A.D. All these things that I've been discussing can plausibly be applied to the sacking of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. But when we take these bullet points out of the Olivet Discourse, what are we left with? There is nothing left over to apply to the end of all things. The number one rule of hermeneutics is nothing... The number one rule of hermeneutics is not to read into the text what we want to find there. Instead, we are supposed to draw out of the text what the original author intended. Yet, if the original author, Mark, never mentioned anything about an absolute end, never recorded Jesus speaking to an absolute end, more precisely, then we must not eisegete that into the text of Mark 13. Not only is this sound hermeneutics, it is also good philosophy and good science. And this brings us to another reason why I reject futurism in favor of preterism. I am talking about Occam's razor, or the principle of parsimony. I first came across Occam's razor in the movie, based on the book of the same name, Cosmos. It is a good principle, despite Carl Sagan's presumed use of it to argue against the existence of God. I presume that's what he was getting at in Cosmos when that was brought up. By implication. The jury is still out for me whether Occam is a universal law of epistemology or just a general rule of thumb. At any rate, it seems that we should not multiply prophetic fulfillments beyond what is necessary. And that is precisely what the futurist wants to do. The abomination of desolation refers to Antiochus Epiphanes, but it has a double fulfillment to the Antichrist in the rebuilt temple after the dome of the rock is torn down. That's the futurist view. Why? There is little... But why take that interpretation? There is little, if any, reason for expecting a double fulfillment of end-time prophecies, so far as I'm aware. And we'll pick it up there in video number 3. Shalom out.